Let's see, issuing, we're at 22 days. It's kind of been fluctuating between 22 and 24. They've been working some Saturdays to try to get caught up with issuing. And I think they're getting fully staffed now too. They've hired 3 or 4 new people to fill vacancies. So, of course, that takes a little bit of time to get training and all that. It's quite intense training to be able to issue. I've never done it and I never will. Medical certificates, if they're faxed in, we're working within the last 5 days. Of course, point of contact is real time, so going into offices is by far the best way to do it. And actually, if you go in to offices and do that, that's 95% of the workload. So really only 5% of all medicines get faxed in, which is probably better to go in person because if there's questions that with the driver, it can be answered at that point. When you fax things in, sometimes things are missing or questions that need to be asked. Medical waivers are taking about 7 to 10 business days to process once we receive the waiver packet. I know there's been a few packets that come in that are not complete, and so sometimes they have to send a letter back to the driver asking for additional information. We're in the process of working to set up an email address for school bus pre-apps. So this is new, and it's something that I think the industry has wanted for a year or so here. So we're working on that to get it set up so that you'll be able to scan a copy of the pre-app and send it as an attachment in an email. Or if you want to continue to fax them, you can do it that way. So I'll get you more information to get that email address set up. Just to give you some statistics for fiscal year 15, state examiners gave 686 school bus road tests, and the passing rate for school buses was 74%. Other CDL tests was at 68%. So you can take some pride in knowing that school bus candidates are testing a little bit better than the other CDL candidates. Kathy's got her annual third-party review seminar scheduled for December 1st and the 11th. We just completed training a new class of third-party testers the first week in November. We're working on getting an RFP hopefully published by the end of the year because we need a new automated testing for all the knowledge testing. And we're probably looking, that's going to be at least probably a good $1 million investment into the software needed for that. So we're working on getting that published, hopefully by the end of the year. I'm also working with our site coordinator to place a sample of what the new medical examiner certificate is going to look like starting December 22nd. So right now the format that's used is good to use up until examinations that are done to the 22nd of December. Starting the 22nd of December, the medical examiners are using a new format, and we'll get that posted on the website. So it's going to look a lot different than the current medical examiner certificate. And the same process will occur. The driver will get a copy of it, but if the driver's bringing you back a copy, just to give you a heads up, it's going to look different. And it's a step in the direction of having the medical examiner certificates accepted electronically, which will happen by 2018. So that'll be really nice. We're planning examiner and service training. It will be in January and February. We'll go around the state and do it in groups of examiners across the state. And then the K restriction is typically a K restriction is for intrastate only, and it's been given to drivers that are under 21 that have a DOT or a DBS medical waiver. And also they are getting the K restriction if they self-certify category 3. So if, some drivers only want to drive in intrastate commerce, but if you need them to drive interstate, encourage them to select category 1, or else they'll get a K restriction. But we've had some drivers renewing, they self-certify category 3, they come back when they get their license and they go, why do I have this K restriction intrastate only on my card? And it's because of how they self-certify. So just a heads up on that. Any other questions, concerns? Life going good? No?
Yeah, would you say that with this new system, medical certifications, that's improving relatively smooth for people that are doing the search out there, they understand everything and are up to speed on their awareness?
I don't understand your question,
Well,
I'm sorry.
are we getting anybody that's going in to get medically certified and the doctors doing the certification are up to speed with everything that has to happen?
Well, that's kind of in the hands of the federal government as far as FMCSA. They certify the medical examiners, and I know they've been doing a lot of outreach, and of course, all those certified examiners have to pass certification. So they need to know all the medical requirements for a driver to qualify. We've had a few issues with some of the medical doctors not certified and doing medicals, and we've caught a few of those and had to deal with those. But I think the information is out there fairly well. All right, thank you.
Brian, get interested in that?
Dwayne started since he's not happy here, things aren't done good.
Too much on the road there, Lieutenant.
I just got back from the NASDAQ conference last week, it was good. There's quite a few teams over there for NAPT or NASDAQ. We had one of our inspectors compete in their Success Challenge, so it was a good experience. A lot of good training that he received that he was pleased with and kind of excited to bring back some of it. Many of you probably heard Administrator Grosskamp made a pretty bold statement saying he feels seatbelts should be on all school buses and that they need to be on all school buses at this time. He didn't go as far as to say they're going to do any rulemaking, and there's a couple theories on that one. He's hoping that the industry will kind of push it themselves and just make it happen, or states themselves will take it on. And with any change in presidency, it's probably going to be a new administrator anyway, so he won't really have time in his time that's left there, most likely, to get anything done. But it was a good discussion. There's a lot of people that were pleased to hear what he said, and would it make a difference? Personally, I think, yes, they would make a difference. The only issue we need to worry about or focus on with kids getting injured or killed around school buses, absolutely not. But to start, it took a lot of people by surprise. They didn't think he'd come and make that bold of a statement at that point, but I think it got the discussions going for sure. And I know Channel 5 called right away, Channel 4 ran a local story on it, that 90 event. So it's getting people to talk. The last meeting we talked about that right turn lane survey we did. We had another follow-up meeting with Senator Carlson on that. He is wanting to do something in statute to address that issue. Take it out of rule and just put it in statute that the rest of the stop arm procedure information. And then he was going to kind of craft some language and then let both associations review it. It's essentially going to take support from them to get moving forward. And it was clear to him from both associations that to be able to keep that discretion and local control would be preferred. To let the districts or the communities themselves figure out, you know what, this might be the best and safest spot for this particular corner. Not every right turn lane stop is going to be the same. You don't know what's down to the right side of that road. It might be a safer spot to do a different type of stop. It might be that that's your best choice. But to leave some flexibility there for you to make that choice versus the state coming in the authoritative on that issue isn't necessarily the best appropriate either. So, the State Patrol Dispatch Center in Rochester no longer has a fax machine, so you can't be faxing in any stop arm forms, and even the main dispatch center in the cities prefers that if you have stop arm violations, call them to report them, otherwise you don't know how long it's going to fit on the fax machine. And then they will tell you their preferred method of getting that information. If they want you to scan and email it to them, if they want you to send it to the fax yet in the metro. But for your initial notification of law enforcement on the stop arm violation, at least on the state highways, when you report it to the state patrol, go ahead and call your regional dispatch center to report for violations. Right?
Representative, on the seatbelt issue at the national meeting, were there any comments from representatives from various states where they put seatbelts into buses in terms of how students are complying with the utilization violation?
The administrator would say he's going to reach out to the 6 states that have current legislation on seatbelts in school buses, but I believe there's really only one state that actually has them in place and required. The other ones that we put in the legislation have the caveat in there about when funding is provided. So I think California is the only one that actually has the full actual adult requirement. There's certainly jurisdictions or companies that chose to put them in on their own, but there's quite a significant applause when he made the statement, and then they had time for questions at the end that there's a lot of concern, or the typical responses that you hear about, not belittling by any means, more kids die outside the bus, which absolutely is correct, or the cost. Other concerns, it might be harder to get them off the bus, kids won't wear them, and the administrator basically said, it's time to quit making excuses and take action. He was very bold and direct at what his wishes were. But again, it's going to be up to each state at this point to decide how they handle it.
This statement then came from the agency, not just his personal feeling?
Yes, he spoke on behalf of its ordinance, that's correct. Okay. Anything else for me? Dwayne, do you have anything to add?
Just right now, we're in the process of replacing the inspector that had retired. So the northeastern Minnesota region is without a full-time inspector right now, so Mitch Marlowe is going to go up and take care of business up there, so we don't have, trying not to have some buses so expired stickers on it. So I've learned every day, you look for anything above the 935, like, who wouldn't believe your guys? So, ongoing with full crash inspections, some interesting ones coming in, driver issue, making some mistakes, one of the things with pedestrian, had video of the bus, inside the bus, and the pedestrian was quite visible from moving the camera with the driver never saw it. But most of all the other ones we are having a single minor problem things, major serious ones, and no major serious injuries happening with bus crashes. So other than looking for another inspector, we're just going to be expected for the week that we're in, or this month.
Not really have too much, just a reminder that your reports are due November 30th. Contractors, if you don't have your invoices or your miles, routes, or hours reported yet to your district, those you need to get in district. If you don't have your data verification reported, you need that in by November 30th. And I'm working on Q&A to be posted on the MP website for open enrolled special ed students who's responsible for transportation. So hopefully we'll have that ready at the issues committee next month. So if you're able to attend that, that's what I got going on right now. Any questions for me?
With that open enroll, it's towards the season, it's a big thing, and then they open enroll,
Pretty much. We'll just have to auditing for their students. So, they've been involved a little bit too, so we'll have this completed and ready to send out the transportation issues.
Have you been talking with the special ed director?
Have we?
Yeah.
Compliance has been kind of my go-to,
Okay.
and they have had contact with special ed directors in the district. So,
Okay. Well, the process that started in a couple of districts is not spread.
I understand that, that's why
Yeah.
we're doing that.
And that's why
Yeah.
I'm hoping everybody's on the same page instead of setting themselves up for a bad.
And you know what, I'm just doing this because I'm just telling you, I don't want to ruin anything for anybody, but I'm just telling you what, needs to be in the IEP. You know, it is an IEP, it is an individual education plan, which means like we need to provide transportation. I mean, it's a related service, so we need to provide that transportation as is indicated in the IEP, according to the student's disabilities. So, I know there's been a lot of question in regards to some letters that have went out this year from some of the districts, and we just want to make sure that we don't get audited or have any type of legal issues, discrimination issues. So, and we're pulling all this together. So hopefully, when that comes out next month, it will end.
What's the date of that meeting next month?
December, let me look. I think it's the 14th.
So just, while she's looking at it up, just to give a little background of what that discussion was, in case you weren't aware of it. Some school districts started a discussion and actually took action on saying that if an open enrollment student comes in and turns out to have an IEP with transportation on the IEP, they will only transport them within the district's boundaries, just like every other student. We treat every student the same thing, which is somewhat of a different understanding than what a lot of people thought was, if you have an IEP, you have to transport them, even if they're an out-of-district open enrollment student, you have to transport them. So there was a little bit of a, you know, what's going on here, what's right. Julie got involved, some of us got involved. Well, now, quite a few school districts, at least in the metro area, have now taken this stand. And they all have a blanket statement that is being distributed, and they're ready to go with it. So that's why I asked if there's been discussions, because there is still a lot of question of, is this really right or not? So hopefully, the Department of Education and the directors of special education are talking, and they're coming to an agreement before we're all caught in the middle.
In talking with compliance, I know they have spoke with several special ed directors as we've been coordinating this, and what the response is from them, so, in their districts. So, I mean, I personally have not talked to special ed directors, but compliance communicates with them, so I'm hoping that we're all on the same page and support the districts.
I have a question for you on the question that you could go back and ask. No, on the IEP, you would check yes or no for transportation. So if you've got a kiddo on IEP and the team feels, no, they can ride a regular bus, they check no. The compliance department, through an audit that we had, told our district that they're on an IEP, and if they qualify for special ed transportation, even if they're not using it, you have to check yes.
That's my understanding, yes.
And is that something new, because that's not was our understanding before? You only check yes if they are actually utilizing special services.
They check yes. For example, like if the student were to move to another district, that district transportation department will be aware that the student doesn't qualify for special transportation, and they can assign that student a stop. It's up to the parent or the IEP team to determine, if the parents refuse that special transportation, it still has to say, yes, checked on there, until the IEP team meets and determines that the student is able to ride the regular ed bus. And I have a Q&A on that as well. So I'll have to vet
There's
that
some
out.
real confusion in our district on it. Now, all of our special ed kids, all 1,250, they're checking yes.
And, I disputed this as well, because I said, we check yes on this. I'm like, this is gonna cause a lot of confusion in the transportation department, because they're gonna think every student that is checked yes is gonna need to be provided a bus stop. And, but according to what they told me, it needs to be checked, yes. I mean, I can't imagine there's that many out there that are being utilized that have yes checked and are not taking advantage of it, but still it's the ones that are in question that parents decided that, you know what, my kid is not gonna ride the special ed bus, but we have to keep it checked yes, because the IEP team determined that the student should ride a special ed route.
If they do that, then we claim them as no free disabled on their part, or even if they check yes, we get them all routed, and then the parent says, no, I'm not gonna do it, and we then continue to claim them as no free, or we claim them as a 0-0 not transport.
Let me pull up my little cheat sheet I have here, and I'll practice by the end of the meeting, okay?
So why do we have no on there? That's my question, why do we have no on there? Because now, in our district, every special ed kid is being checked yes, even though they ride
That's a
the
great
regular bus.
compliance issue, or question, for whoever designed to build the IEP. I just told you to tell me, or at least try to figure out what to do with it. So, that's a good question, and I think, probably rolling into another area here, but on that IEP, it has on there, yes or no, to be checked if the student has a paraprofessional, which, as the majority of you know, a lot of times the student is required to have a paraprofessional ride with them on the bus. But a lot of times, no is checked because they have included it in the accommodations modification section of the IEP, and not, we all know transportation, oh my gosh, we can only give you like a little portion of the IEP, which I get, it's that pricing thing. But, if you don't have that accommodations modification section of the IEP stating that the student needs a paraprofessional on the bus, and they have no checked on there, those two are kind of related, okay? The paraprofessional and the special ed transportation piece in the IEP. So, I can check.
I just think it's worth a conversation.
Yep.
Whether they come to one of our meetings, or, I think it's worth the conversation, because there's
Sure.
tons of confusion now in our district, or belief on our end, because I'm seeing yes on all these IEPs, but they're riding regular buses.
And I'll be honest, I think it's gonna be a work in progress to get everybody on the same page. It's gonna be transportation, compliance, and needs, and it's gonna be special ed directors and special ed departments, as well as relaying that message out to your special ed managers that.
And just like to remind you that all noon research days will be outside, so we're asking students, please stay out of the bus aisles and the water area.
If I can offer a kernel of thought on this discussion, think about the notion of injecting this in the report format. Two boxes, one special ed bus, regular bus. So that if a parent wants a child to integrate into the system, the transportation system, like all of their other peers, and want them on a regular ed bus, then check it. If the student is on a bus that is equipped with a wheelchair, or has to have specialized tie-downs for oxygen equipment and those kinds of needs, that would be a given. But maybe it would help to eliminate the confusion that comes from this box check versus that one, and what does it mean? So be more specific in that regard.
Yeah, it just needs clarification. Like I said, we have 1,250 special ed kids in our district on IEP. We only transport about 350. That's a lot of other kids that have yes marks in their body.
Sure, when it comes to a complaint in the audit, are you getting a date because you said yes and you're not providing by the IU5?
Right, when they come in and do my audit, and I say, no, they're on the regular, and they say,
Oh,
but,
they close one.
yeah. I just want to talk to my teachers on that.
And I just want to know if I can tell you, I mean, so I discussed that a couple months back, was that you?
When I first heard about it.
Yeah. Okay, can I bring one, we're a safety meeting here, can I bring one concern up? That had, was able to have a conversation with several drivers up in the northern area when I went home one weekend, and we were discussing the whole early childhood transporting, and that was an effect, you know, that early childhood students would receive transportation. And how are we gonna transport them effectively? And this is coming from a driver's standpoint, so I think it's good that we get those, that information from the drivers, because they're the ones up there doing the job. I mean, it's easy for me to recite a statute versus, who's actually out there doing it. But, so a couple of the drivers were asking me, and they said, so, you know, what's going to happen with transporting early childhood students? And I said, well, I don't really know what the plan is for legislative talks this year, but, they gave me their point of view, and their point of view was that if they have early childhood routes that they're running, and the comment was made that if you're going to transport early childhood students, the driver's responsibility is to drive and transport those kids safely. And this is what they have stated, is that is there any way they can consider having like a paraprofessional ride those early childhood routes? I mean, you know, these are 2 to 5-year-old students. I mean, they have behaviors, they should be told what's right and wrong, and the drivers get frustrated when they get called in on the carpet, you know, because there's like a discipline issue or something they get taken care of, and, so that's my comment, is if all of this early childhood flies through, is it something that we want to address and maybe have, when they look at the funding piece of things, are we going to be able to consider having a paraprofessional ride an early childhood route? I mean, to make it a little bit easier on the drivers, is that, because I know it's a struggle for some of them when they're being called on the carpet in regards to, you know, Susie visits Johnny and the driver's doing the driving, and so yeah, that's just my little take on things.
I think it's bigger than that. You know, this is 1999 recommendation, and now with the seatbelt comment that they made, is that compartmentalization is not designed for preschool. So it goes back to, you know, what are we going to have on there for equipment for them? Are we going to have seatbelts somewhere? Are we going to have star seats somewhere? You know, so you've got that piece of it, compartmentalization. And then I agree with, you've got 2-year-olds getting on the bus, who is going to keep an eye on the kids? You know, 2 years old. Right.
And then at our planning meeting, Brad Lindell was there, who pretty much, my understanding is, goes up to that transportation for the school district when at legislative session.
He's MAPC's lobby.
Okay.
We've also lobbied for the special ed.
Okay. And when we asked, like, how much money was going to be allocated for early childhood transportation, and it was just going to be that 4.66% of the general ed revenue, well, if we have to make additional accommodations to transport, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think it's great that early childhood students attend school. I'm with you, we just want them to be transported safely, and so that's what I'm wondering too, is if we need to factor in some additional dollars, you know, I mean, our contractors, are they gonna have to purchase additional equipment? And then if they're purchasing additional equipment, then it's gonna reflect on the invoice the school district receives and so forth. So, am I thinking about this the right way or
No,
not?
I think you are, 'cause I agree, early intervention is great. I mean, some of these
Right,
kids make
right.
great strides, but, you know, we forgot about the safety factor. In my opinion, is always been transportation's always totally full. You know, we think about the kids who want to stay into that building, we don't think about how we're going to get them to it.
Right, yeah, and so, my thoughts on really transportation at this point,
So if you're looking for an affirmation, yes, I think it's a very valuable conversation to have, because likewise, we're struggling with a lot of those same issues. Funding is one thing, behavior is another thing, safety is a huge thing. With the seat backs getting higher and higher, departmentalization again, still isn't appropriate for those students. It's definitely worth having that discussion.
okay. And here was, you know, when you talked about the higher speeds, this is just kind of the scenario that this one driver gave me, and he said, you know, he goes, these are 4-year-old kids, they can't see over the seats, it's their, you know, curiosity that, you know what, this is see what's going on, just like the rest of us. So it's like they're peeking around the seat, the next thing you know, they're practically sitting in the aisle. And, we know that, you know, you need to sit in the seat for that reason, and it's for that safety reason, but, you know, they are safer, so.
I think the other thing is with the driver shortage out there right now, we need to do more things to support our drivers and to throw something missing, like this app down. Now they have to figure out how they're gonna drive down the road and watch all those kids that are behind their back.
Right.
And that's not fair to the drivers.
Right.
I have a question, maybe I'm ignorant. Are they not required to sit in booster seats? You know, because of the height restrictions? And I know in the contract, all of our early childhood buses require booster seats, and we have age in those buses because of the stability.
Okay, so I have to ask, and we're gonna talk about that later, but are you talking about booster seats? Or
Aftermarket.
Okay.
And some are built in the seat, but, yeah, we can't transport them unless they have to secure them.
They're probably going with NISTA's 1999 recommendation, and I think that is an industry we have to look at as well. You know, if we have a major bus crash,
Right.
and it comes back that, hey, the recommendation was that compartmentalization is not designed for these kiddos. In our district, that's why we put all of our preschoolers in.
So I don't know the answer to your question, because
No, it's
transportation.
not.
It's not required.
It's not required.
Wow.
As long as they're on a bus, not a van or a Suburban or something like that, if they're in a bus, there's no restraint required, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Honestly, what do you about the
Right. Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's kind of shocking.
But the law, there, I don't remember how many years ago it was when the booster law changed, and they had, I think, all vehicles, and then it did impact school buses at that time, and then they went back and changed it. But I think what Minnetonka's doing is they're just going with the recommendation, the we got.
I couldn't even imagine what that would be like, so.
Okay, so that's enough for the department of education.
That was a good conversation. You can learn.
No, I think it's a great conversation, which flows in nice into our next part here. Rodney, if you want to get yourself ready for your presentation here, I will kind of make some notes here. A little bit ago, Cindy passed a sheet of paper to you. Any questions that you would like answered today, go ahead and fill that out, or anything you'd like to see for future meetings, But if you don't fill that sheet of paper up, please return it to school for the next meeting. When you're all done, just, you can flip it over, find it for you. So with that being said, coming behind me getting set up, I feel that Rodney and Kayla put together some nice presentations today regarding what we're talking about, early childhood integration with regular ed busing.
What time are your gals coming on?
Oh, okay, we can go to Kayla first.
Oh, okay. But before I get to the seats, I have a question for John.
No.
As the NAPC Vice President, has NAPC and MSBOA had any conversation or a joint statement that people can use about making recommendations or using the economic
Yeah, we haven't talked to MSBOA yet. We're just trying to gather the basic information to start a statement. I requested from the bus dealerships what the latest cost would be for a standard 77 passenger for upgrading the seatbelts. And we're waiting on that. In fact, I was just talking to Chris about it before the meeting started. I got to talk to Thomas. I haven't heard anything from IC yet. But yeah, our goal is to have a one-page that just puts together some of the basic questions to answer, or be prepared to answer, so that it can go to NASBO, it can go to the superintendent, it can go to whatever. And one of our next things is to try to find out insurance statements. I'll sit down with Lieutenant Rue to find out what, if the school district wanted to buy a bus right now, the school bus, or the seatbelt on it, what does that mean? How is it enforced? How is it, accepted or whatever that stuff. So hopefully we'll have something very soon. I know he's got the newsletter coming out here in a couple of weeks, so I'd like to have something very good like that. But we have not talked to the school bus operators yet, but we plan to.
Curious if any districts have had phone calls from parents or your administrators have said anything.
My administrator said, let's start doing it. And I told him, wait a minute. Let's talk about this one. I sent the national notice of her, and she said, well, let's start getting seatbelts. So.
Even if it's I think of a pre-trip in the bus, I think they check on seatbelts.
Right.
That's one more time every morning, pre-trip in the bus.
Yeah, the other side of it, and I talked to a group yesterday at a first trans meeting, that we as an industry are going to have to take into consideration is even though no rulemaking is being done yet, the statement has been made. So from here on out, and even stuff that's already developed, if there's a, heaven forbid, if there's a horrible crash, any of us have one involved. And we go through those common, things that we all have to go through. The media is there, the parents are upset and all this other stuff. And the question is, would these kids be safe with seatbelts? The federal government is now taking their side, with that statement. There's no rulemaking or anything, but the statement has been made. Because that statement has been made, are the lawsuits more intense? Are the insurance, claims going to be more intense? Because they're saying, yes, there's not a rule, but the government says you should have it. And are you ordering something? Are you doing all this stuff? And I think that all has to be taken into consideration. So we're looking at, $6,000 to $8,000 addition to a purchase of a bus. We have to go through the whole thing of, do you retrofit old buses, or is it just new buses, how do you integrate it, all that kind of stuff. But if a bus rolls over and there's some serious injuries or death in a bus, or we have another cockpit or something like that, what is the lawsuit going to end up being? How much is the district going to be paying out? How much is the insurance going to be paying out? Because the statement has been made. And I think if we just, as an industry, we have to work through all this stuff and consider all these kind of things as we're waiting to see what happens at the federal level more. So that's why we're trying to get to, we'd like to get at least some kind of one page so everybody's thinking about the same thing.
All right, so I'm going to talk about car seats and safety vests on school buses. And Rodney brought up seat. These don't fit quite right here, of course, they're not high back, but.
But that's from his newest bus.
When we were, I was telling them earlier, when we were out in Richmond, a week or so ago, there was a bus out there that they had all of the bus seats from 1957, is that the first one?
Yeah.
All the different style types that we've gone through. It was kind of interesting, it was kind of fun walking through that bus, seeing all the seats. So.
Still got one of them in service.
Okay, so, I've got a couple of handouts here. I've been getting a lot of questions on, car seats, star seats, it's what happens out. Combining seats together. So I've got some statements from Charlie Betts at IMMI, and then I have some information on star seats and expiration. One of the questions that I received this year was that star seats don't have an expiration date. They do have an expiration, and that information again is in your handout that you're getting. Another question that I had come up this year was, can I use a, I think it was a safety vest? No, it was a star seat with a seat belt, and then that, that buckle guard. And that information is in there from Charlie that these, whenever you're using a product, you have to remember that that product was crash tested, just that product. The minute you start altering it or adding a product to it, it hasn't been crash tested that way, and the manufacturer is not going to stand by that product. So you never want to mix products together. I'll pass this book around. This is Easy Way. It's got all the different products. You can use any company you want, but Easy Way in their magazine here, it lists all the different products you can use. Now, when you look through this, they have those aftermarket products in here. The Angel Guard, the Buckle Guard. I think this is the one on their website. No, this is the one where they also have, you can use straps for their feet and straps for their arms. You can't use those. So I'll pass it around for you guys to take. I'll keep at that. But, we can't use those products. So, the different safety vests. How many people in here use safety vests? Okay. We are using more and more safety vests in our school district, and we're seeing more usage with those with autistic kiddos. And one of the things that we have found with our autistic kiddos is it's that pressure that the safety vests give them, and our behaviors seem to go away once we put them in. There's several different sizes of the safety vests. I have the blue one here. The blue is a small, an extra small safety vest. Then when you get up into the medium size, that is, this is the medium, it's burgundy colored, and then the large is black colored. There's one difference between the burgundy and the blue, and the black. Does anybody know what that difference is between the small and the medium and the large? When you get to the large, you don't have to have that crotch strap. So on the large vest, this is how the large vest would go on. Okay? Zip her in the back. Now, medium, you'll notice that we have these straps. They unclip you put them through the child's legs and clip them in the back. The blue is the same way. So if you have a safety vest in a small or medium that does not have the crotch strap, you're going to want to call the manufacturer on that. The reason that these vests have the crotch strap in the smaller sizes is there was a lawsuit after a child submarined out of the safety vest and they strangled themselves. So again, you want to make sure that those crotch straps are there on the sizes except for the large. Any questions on that?
It used to be just a small size.
The medium size has a 2.
Is it changing, like, just kind of going back to what I was thinking about 4 years back, is this actually?
As far as, I'm not sure if it was a recent change, I mean, they've been on there as long as I've been. So, and every once in a while, I'll have one come back to me, and one of the scraps. Well, I have gone back and keep reminding the drivers and the bus assistants, you know, when they get on in that vest, make sure, and that's cool too, make sure that those crotch straps are there, make sure that you can clip, and they've changed the webbing on these a little bit. It used to be at the end, when I could pass it around, they took the material and they folded it over and then sewed it. It used to be that wasn't, it was just more of a straight piece, and these clips would come right off. And if you have an older vest like that, and you have clips missing, all you need to do is call the company, and they'll send you these clips. They're pretty cheap. So I've done that. Sometimes the kids will play with these and bust them off, and so I'll pass this around. There's another safety vest out there. I haven't used these. I don't know if any of you have. This is the Bessie safety vest. Now this one here, you would put, this is the cam wrap, you would put the cam wrap around the back of the seat. And then the child actually is in it like this. And then the seat belts that are on your bus, you put the seat belt through these loops and flip it. So this is another type of safety vest that's out there. Does anybody use these?
Can I ask a question on that one?
Yep.
Since you are using the seatbelt assembly, the seat, but you're also using the cam wrap to go around the seat back.
Yep.
Does that next seat need to be vacant then?
Great question. Okay, so, did everybody hear Dwayne? Yeah. All right, so his question was is that because this cam wrap is around the back of the bus, and now I've changed how that seat's going to respond in a crash, the seat directly behind doesn't have to be empty. Anytime you're putting the cam wrap around the seat, whether it's this one or for a star seat or one of these other seats, the seat directly behind, the children in that seat have to be in some kind of system, even if it's just a seat belt. So if there's no seat belts in that bus, let's say you're doing it in a full-size bus and there's no seat belts on it, you can't put anybody behind in that seat. Does that make sense? They have to be restrained.
I thought that maybe perhaps because we're using the seatbelt assembly right as part of the restraint, which you could.
No, it's because we're changing how that seat isn't going to flex like it should. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. So, one of the things that I hear once in a while is that the kids are getting out of the safety vest. You want to make sure that this safety vest is nice and snug on the kiddos, that the zipper's in the back. In the winter time, this should be worn under their jacket, never over their jacket. If it's over their jacket, what happens in the event of a crash is we put too much space between the body and the harnesses, so we want it underneath the jacket. If a kiddo is wiggling out of it, let's say they're getting around and they're getting the zipper down. What I've done, and it's worked so far, knock on wood, the first thing I look at, what hand are they using to get that zipper down? So if I have them seated right here in this spot, and they're getting their right arm up, getting that zipper down, I'll move them over here to this side, next to the window, because then hopefully they can do it with their left arm. The other reason they might be getting out of it is that it's not tight enough, or that you haven't, after you put them in the vest, that you haven't locked the straps. So what happens, when you get your kiddo in there, see this little black piece? What you need to do is you need to take your loose piece, run it through there, run it back through, like that. And then you need to wrap it back through one more time, like that. And that locks it. So they won't be able to no matter how much they push or pull, they're not going to be able to get that out. If you don't do that, what can happen is, all they have to do with their little fingers, pull it out, and then they can continue pulling it right out. So you lock it back in there. When you get them in the seat, and you can come up afterwards and take a look at how I have these seats set up. But when you get them in the seat, I always like telling the kiddos exactly what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clip in, I'm going to clip on the top or clip on the bottom. I like clipping on the bottom first versus the top. It's a lot easier, especially if you have to make adjustments by clipping on the bottom. When you clip them in, so, I'm not taking it off anymore. Can you compare those two? No? Okay, well, let's pretend it's not good. So I have it flipped up.
It's not.
When you clip them in, you want to make sure that these clips, or that these, what are these called, rings, are right at their hips, the side of their hips. You don't want them in the front, because in the event of a crash, it's not at the bony part of their body. So you want to make sure that these clips are at the side of their body, the bony part of their body. The other thing is that you want to make sure that on the camera, again, you can come up here and look later, we want these clips down as far into the seat bite as possible. We want their seat as tight to the back of that seat as possible. Up here, we want movement. We want them to be able to move their head forward. Does that make sense? When you're putting the cam wrap on, one of the things that we'll see, and again, this one was a little bit tough because of the lower seat back, but you want that cam wrap on there nice and tight. Now, you don't need to have a huge indentation in it. You just want it on there tight enough that they're not going to be able to slide back and forth. Any questions on that? Yes, sir. You slide. That gets scary when you slide. What I like to do with the kiddos when I'm fitting them for the vest is put them try the vest on in the classroom, and then we'll take the bus over to the school, and then put the kiddo on the bus and fit them in the bus with it. So what I don't want to do is do that when I come and pick them up at the end of the day, or when I pick them up in the morning with parents. Because sometimes you've got to do quite a bit of adjusting depending on the height of the child. I think the biggest problem that I've seen is getting clips in the right spot. On the vest, when they're sitting in the seat, you want to make sure that the vest is resting on their thigh. Just like your seatbelt, if it's not on the thigh, it's too high. In the event of a crash, if it's not on the thigh, not by their hip bones, in the event of a crash, up too high, they could have internal injury. So you want to make sure that that's down low enough, right on the thigh. So the same thing, with your own seatbelt. Any questions on this? I'm going to move on to the next one. They're going to hear at 11:15, right? Okay. No questions? All right.
What recommendations do they make with respect to maintaining cleanliness of a room?
You want to follow that's a great question. So Ray wants to know about maintaining the cleanliness of them. You want to follow the manufacturer's instructions, and it's typically just mild soap and water. You don't want to dry clean them, you don't want to throw them in the wash machine, you don't want to iron them, and I would definitely not recommend pulling them all apart, because just like a car seat, are you going to remember how...
So would they recommend it for the city of employees hand washing, that they use protective gloves for from the standpoint of sanitation and
Yeah.
personal health?
Sure, they could do that, and again, just soap and water, no chemicals, they're gonna wanna make sure that they're checking them, that they're not frayed, that all the pieces are there, like I said, every once in a while, like, this will be going on with mine. All right, so, moving on to the Star Seat, how many of you guys use Star Seats? Okay. There's a couple of different seats out there on the market. This one is the Star Seat from IMMI. The instructions are on the seat, how to install it. Again, I didn't get a good install on here because of the low seat back. You want to make sure that you've got it nice and snug on the seat. This one here obviously is not. I can move it back and forth. You don't need it super tight, but just so that it's not moving back and forth. When you put the kiddo in this particular seat, again, I always tell them what I am doing as I'm putting them in the seat. One of the questions that you hear every once in a while is, what do I do about when I connect the crotch strap? So my recommendation is, when you're putting a child in one of these seats, is to loosen all of the harnesses as loose as they will get, as loose as they will go. For a couple of reasons. One, you want to make sure that you're getting that nice snug fit in these seats, and these are going to be snug fit very much like a car seat. So you're going to put the kiddo in here. The harnesses are nice and loose. I'm going to tell them, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buckle you in now. I'm going to take my hand and put the back of my hand towards their crotch so that my palm is towards me. And then I'm going to go ahead and snap them in there. And again, everything is nice and loose here, so I'm far enough away from the crotch area. Then I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up.
I think your remark is critical aspects of training requirements, that drivers clearly understand what you just said with respect to the hand in terms of fastening in the crotch area.
Yep, and again, even in a car seat, you want to do that. Have everything those harnesses as loose as you can, and your hand would be palm facing you, okay? Then once I have these fairly snug, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect the chest strap. Now, I'm going to give it another little bit more of a tug. On the Star Seat, there's this yellow, it says safeguard on it. That's the height adjuster for the shoulder straps, so you want those down by their shoulders. Just like in your own personal vehicle, some of us who are shorter, when you go to put that lap shoulder belt on, that lap belt is in your neck. You want to make sure people can see. You want to make sure that those shoulder straps are down as far as the on that shoulder. So you're going to adjust those down, and then this one's too loose. I can pinch quite a bit of the harness here. You shouldn't be able to pinch that. That should be nice and snug. I'm going to tighten it up some more. Okay. That chest strap then should be at the boniest part of their chest. You always want to make sure it's going to be right about armpit level. Every once in a while I'll see them, they're way too high on the child or they're way too low, so they invented a crash. If it's too low, you can have those internal injuries. Too high, obviously, injuries up in the neck area. So you want it right at the armpit level. Any questions on this one? Whether you're using the safety vest or you're using a star seat, you always want to make sure that you're using the right seat for the child. So you want to look at the child, their age, their height, and their weight. The same on an integrated seat. What does it say on that integrated seat for their height and weight? If you put a child, let's say this is rated at 65 pounds and this child is weighs 80 pounds, in the event of a crash, these harnesses may not do their job because the child weighs more than what they would crash test for that. So always look at that height and weight. Now, like us, we get our information from our parents in the spring of the year for the fall. So in the fall, you want to go back and double check. Where are they at on their height and weight? Have they grown any taller? Have they put on any more weight? So that you're getting the right kind of system for them. The other thing is, when we're using like the safety steps, keep in mind that we always want a child in a least restrictive environment. So if we're putting them in this, we better have a real good reason why we're putting them in it versus the seatbelt. Our kids in our buses always, our older kids, always start out with the seatbelt. And then if we're having behavior issues, what we'll do is we'll meet with the IEP team and come up with maybe activities for them to do with us or a reward program. We find out, okay, that's not working, what's our next step? We always try everything we can before we put them in a system like this because this system is more restrictive. Now, in the event of a crash, all you have to do is, if you cut right where the seatbelt comes together in the back, where the camera comes together in the back, you make one slit, and it's going to be right below the nail end. What will happen is you'll be able to slip, and I can't on this one obviously, but you'll be able to, the child will be able to stand up and that strap should come right out. And now the child can walk off the bus and you can be holding on to this. So if you've got a runner, you've got some way to hold on. What's laughing over there? Which, comes to this right away, means I talked about that emergency. I had one of our bus assistants make some of these for me. I just went to Ace Hardware and bought this. I don't have it around with you guys. We always talk about what are we going to do if we have to evacuate our bus? How are we going to get those kids off the bus? How are we going to keep them together? In the building I'm at, we've got a bunch of preschool, we have a preschool program. And when they walk them outside, or they walk them down to the bathrooms, or walk them to the gym, they have these things. So we made a bunch of these for, every one of our buses has one. So in the case of that they have to evacuate because of a crash or a mechanical breakdown, they can hand these out to the little kids and they can hold on to these, and they work in the classroom. Why would they work for us on the school bus? So it was cheap investment for me, and the bus assistant that did this for me just had a blast doing it. So food for thought. Okay, any questions on these two?
Do you have to have, say, if the regular student can't consider the friends with the space people? There's no money. And okay, well, I'm going to start, you have to have the reason for the parents?
Yeah, I would be very, very careful with that. I would try everything else possible, and, follow your bus policy. They can't, they're not special ed, riding the bus is a privilege.
We had just one particular parent who's starting to think about it.
And maybe that's gonna be, they lose their riding privilege. Right, okay? Here? Okay.
On a much lighter side, while you were strapping yourself up there was a little kid at the window watching that. I'd love to hear the story he's gonna go home with today. Really good, because this is pretty serious stuff,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But
And-
he was really intent watching.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody needs a bathroom break or anything, but they are at the ends of the pod. This one over here is the closest. If anybody needs to go over there. But otherwise, if not, I think we're gonna fall right into Julie. She's off on that side, and Lynn on this side. They are our, you introduce yourselves.
I'm full-time speech therapist, and then Lynn and I coordinate all of the district's early childhood programs. And I'm the district's early childhood special education teacher, as well as coordinating with Julie.
We're waiting in here.
Rodney asked us to cover a little bit about the students that we serve. All of Holdingford District's early childhood programs are on site here. So we benefit from having the classrooms, administration, transportation, everybody close by. We have family education classes which cover kids from birth through kindergarten, and that's when parents come with their children to classes. We have one preschool class for 3-year-olds, and then we have 4 preschool classes for 4-year-olds. All of our children with special needs are included in a general education program. So we don't have any separate programming or classes just for our young students that have individual education. So that's the nice part about Holdingford being a small district, is every year we tailor our program to the current needs of the kids for that year. And Lynn and I often, as we're meeting families, we like to offer home visits, just because it's a great connection with the parents. They're often more comfortable for us coming into their homes and building rapport versus asking them to disturb their family day and come here. And then, of course, you learn so much about families when you see their home environment. So that's a little bit about our program.
And we found one of the strongest attributes that we have in having our kids on the regular transportation system is that strong communication between the district, the bus drivers, our administration, and as special ed teachers. If we all know the behavior that we're working on is they can't keep their bottom in the seats, we're going to find different ways to communicate with the parents, classroom teacher, with the principal, with Rodney, with the driver. Everybody knows what we're working on and how we're doing it, so that we can kind of just set that solid force of we're all in this together. You know, you're not alone as a driver or as a parent or the student who's struggling with some of their own behaviors, that everybody's there kind of together working on that.
And oftentimes when we have a team meeting, our more involved kids from birth to age 3 are hired. We hire services out through the Western Ed District. As we know, those kids are coming into our program as they turn 3. If we know there are physical disabilities or maybe some behavioral things, oftentimes Rodney is invited to the staffing. If he's unable to attend, sometimes we just track him down by phone and say, you know, here's a heads up, or, you know, is this a candidate for a bus? Do we need a van? And mainly that's just because of motor or physical needs. So Rodney gives us great input as part of that team designing transportation.
Well, and usually our first step is always, what can we do to make the regular transportation successful for them? That's the first, we're just going to assume that that's going to be successful, but what do we need to do? And then if there's, typically it's a medical issue that's very significant, or a physical disability that is really significant, that we're not able to find a way to make the regular transportation system work.
Correct.
I think we found too, through the years of coordinating, that when we do orientation for school readiness, sometimes a little, a big stone we have to get over is the parents being comfortable, having their young children on the big bus with the big kids, especially our 3-year-olds. This year, our 3-year-old class is 11 students, and I believe all but one come in through school transportation. And that one is parents' choice for the parents' comfort level and the child's inability to. And we let parents know from early on at orientation that it's a right to drive the bus. And we just, like Lynn said, we plan for success. And the younger we have them coming in and on the bus, and we use terms like you get to ride the bus, or riding the bus is fun, we just found that for all of us. So some of the things that we've done throughout the years to kind of help the kids be successful on the bus. We have Just Faces, Happy Face, Sad Face. We cut these out for the drivers. They hand them to the students as they're getting off the bus if it was a great bus ride. They give the slip to their parents or daycare provider, whoever is there to meet them. So they get that immediate feedback from home as well. It's just another piece of communication for us. From a couple of For some of our students, the driver gives them a ticket in the morning, as well as gives one to the family in the afternoon. So sometimes for older students, we have red is the unhappy face because that's the behavior you want to stop. Green is the happy face because that's the behavior you should go ahead and do. So as we're on bus duty in the morning at 8 as kids are arriving, some of our kiddos will come off and either hand us a red or a green card. And if they're a child with some behavior needs, that kind of gives us a heads up as to how the day may go. And then at the end of the day, the driver gives them a red or green card they show to their family. Because as Lynn said, that team communication among staff as well as families is critical.
You find that they hide the red card?
Well, and that's why we do one every day as a parent or family member knows that they have to see a card. Yeah, so whether it's good or bad, somebody's watching. Yeah. One of the other things that we have done with the kiddos is it's a social story about riding the bus, what the expectations are. We send a copy home, so the parents are reading it at home. We read it in the classroom. It's just a nice way to reinforce the behaviors between home and school again, and it also helps them just before they get on the bus to read the stories. And then it works. And for some of our more involved students who have a child-specific para, meaning a para with them all day, they often end their school day in one of the quiet rooms. Lynn and I share a classroom and we don't have students in at the end of the day. So for example, one of our young students comes in at about 2:30 every day. Our dismissal is 2:57. And then they have some quiet time reading books and just doing whatever they need to do to calm his body. And then the para does an amazing job just refreshing his memory about what we need to do on the bus so that we get to continue riding. One of the other things that we've done is the bus bag. Depending on the child and their interests, but I'll just take out a few of the things that we've used in the past. Little chalkboard and chalk keeps them busy, gives them something for their hands to do besides bugging everybody around them. Little clipboard, pencils and paper. One of the other things is, did you talk about a bus buddy? Not yet, no. Having older kids, Rodney will find somebody, or the bus driver will find an older student who's great with kids and wants to help out, and they'll sit next to the child and do some of these activities with them. We kind of found the hard way we used to assign siblings to sit and you get where that's going. You know, that child already has enough extra responsibility throughout the day, and they just need a break to be by their friends and have that time to themselves. So oftentimes the 5th and 6th grade teachers give us a list of kids' names of who is on that bus and who would be a responsible bus buddy. Yeah. Notebooks or folders of coloring pages, crayons, whiteboards. We've got anything that they're interested in. The little etch-a-sketches, wiki sticks, which is a whacked on string, it's not gonna hurt anything. Little tangles, matchbox cars, and just anything that they're interested in that they can keep in their hands, little bendable balls, really anything that you can fit in the backpack that's not gonna cause a lot of trouble. To try.
Right. We call them our bus bags, so they stay on the bus. They don't come into school because then we start losing pieces or we forget to send it back. And for some of our older students, the case managers have the family sign off on a form and then the child can use the school iPod on the bus. And then that comes back to us.
So it's the bus bag, that is one assigned to every child, or?
Just for those, oftentimes it's our occupational therapists who's so aware of the child's sensory needs and just needs to move, that they have a difficult time sitting. So if you just have little fidget toys and things to keep your hands busy, so.
Yeah, and it's not for every child, it's child specific. I think I only have one right now.
Right now, I believe we have one with a bag.
Yeah. And I don't think I had anybody last
Yeah.
year. The year before, I had a couple of kids that had the bag. But it's all based on their interest and what the driver is comfortable with as well. Some of them don't like the crayons and markers. The chalkboard is great. These other little fidgety things are great too. No.
And for some of our kids who waiting doesn't make sense to them, if that is just asking for some escalation or for some behavior. So our younger kids board here at 257, and the high school is at 312?
308.
308. So luckily, we're all one campus connected by hallways. So for some of our kids, they maybe stay in the classroom until the 257 dismissal, and they can come to the library or our room or any other resource room, have 10 or 15 minutes to calm down, and then a staff person would walk them up to the high school. So they don't have that time sitting on the bus. That's all, for some kids.
Yeah.
I think so. One of the things that we do with a lot of our kids, not just for transportation, but is to relate behaviors to a signal light. And it originated from Holdingford's above the line friendship thing. So for our kiddos, we're teaching them that red is a behavior you stop, yellow is a behavior you can fix, and green is a behavior that you go ahead and do. And so we talk about that along with the social story. So you might draw a line with a bus on it on the board. The child would list the green behaviors you can do on the bus, and you write those in green. Under the line is yellow. Those are things that you can go ahead and fix by apologizing or moving to a different seat. And red are those things that you stop. And we're finding more and more every year that we're using these color codes for everything from voice volume. So red is yelling, you have to stop yelling, that's not appropriate for the bus. Yellow, talking, that's good for the bus, but our very best green go-ahead behavior would be a quiet whisper voice. The same is true for kids who maybe choose to use inappropriate words. They're now starting to catch themselves and say, that's a red word, that's a green word. So school-wide among the ages, we're starting to use those color codes related to this.
How does the driver communicate red or yellow during ground time? Do they have like red signs or what, how do you, if you hear one of the students say a bad word?
Mostly it's just the language, if they're able to do stop or red word, and for some kids, you let 2 or 3 go, kind of give that warning and see where they're going with it, but obviously their focus is transportation, and then, there's amazing communication, I think, between drivers, special education staff, as well as general ed staff.
That's one big thing that we have here. We're small enough where we know kids, we know the parents. Drivers are very comfortable telling me and or stopping the principal that's out at the bus unloading zone in the morning or loading up in the afternoon. So there's very good communication within this school.
And I think that's key for our kids with behavior issues on the bus, is that communication between the driver and the case manager or administration. You know, if any of those pieces are missing, we can't have that consistent programming, and then it's more difficult. Any questions?
On the bus bag,
Bus bag, but
on the bus bag, would you have buses with multiple bus bags and then the storage and keep on the bus? Or you have plastic cup and that's to be wedged in and secured somewhere?
You know,
right now, Ray, what we have is only one student with a bag. Very seldom do we ever need to have, I don't think we've ever had 2 bags in a bus.
no.
So, and it's a bag like that there that just stays in the seat.
Yeah. For some kids too, either the pictures of the faces that Lynn showed you are pictures from the bus. We've even contact paper on the seat in front of them. Or if they have a special interest area, like your kids with autism might have, if they're into Disney, we put Disney pictures, contact paper on the window so they have something to reference and look at, which can be calming for them. So this year for the children that we work with, I have about 40 kids on my caseload and list, depending on the day. It's growing as we go. We only have one young child who has special transportation, and that's because of a medical disability, and so it would be unsafe for her to be on bus. But otherwise, all of our students are through regular transportation.
And we do transport preschool through 12, one bus.
Yep, our 3s, 4s, and 5s ride the regular transportation system with all the kids.
And it does work well.
It does, it works really well.
We've got bus buddies that we need to, we all are students, our parents, ourselves, for them, for things to work.
Well, we put our young kids on first, before that, we put the youngest kids on first, and I think that helps a lot.
In the afternoon, when we load, all of our younger kids are on first, they're on board, and then as the release times go, then the rest of the older kids come on. And we load at the elementary school, then we just travel a few hundred feet over to the high school, and that transition is about 8 minutes or so. So with some of the kids, yes, we do hold them back, and we walk them over to high school. It's at 8 minutes or something, it's a speed. So we help them there in that way.
I think as we've teamed together and learned through the years, with Rodney as part of that team, our overall goal is to have kids with the general education, transportation system, you know, planning for success. And then if that doesn't work, our next goal is just prevent it. What can we do to prevent any behaviors? Because as we all know, it's those unstructured times where we see the most behaviors, the lunchroom, whatever. So we try to prevent whenever possible.
Do you ever have to have a conversation with parents of young kids riding with those kids?
They have to, sometimes they're like, I'm kind of worried about the language that they'll hear. And we just encourage them to tell us, you know, if you hear something that you're not comfortable with, let us know. We have a conversation about appropriate language and inappropriate language, but yeah.
Okay.
And we still do have some parents of preschoolers that they have transportation one way, they provide the second way unless it's a student on a service plan. We still, now that we're a quarter of the way through the year, have some parents who choose to provide transportation if their schedule allows. Just because they like that time with their child more than not one of
It's
the
big for me to be here during their orientation times. I make it my best effort to be here, answer questions, make sure that they're comfortable with what's coming. And that's been, I will not miss an orientation day, because that answers so many questions for those parents.
And I would guess about 50% of the questions we get during orientation are related to transportation. Yeah, so, especially if it's their first child.
So when they start in the fall of the year, do you work with them quite a bit in the beginning, and do you see behaviors those first few weeks of school where they're crawling around, or?
Well, I would say probably September is pretty easy. Mid-October and into November is when we start, you know, we're getting frustrated. The drivers had done whatever they could do, so then it's time for us to sit down and talk. So,
And that's with all the kids, not just the preschoolers.
Correct.
Everyone gets a little worthy.
And it tends to happen as you start having breaks in your 5-day week, because our kids appreciate consistency, and we have that in September, and you hit MEA in the end of the quarter, and conferences and holidays, and that's tough for them, but luckily, when we did Spencer at the elementary at 2:57, there's 4 other case managers at the elementary besides Lynn and I. Oftentimes, Sean and Nate, who are case managers for our children with emotional, social, behavioral issues, just go out and chat with the driver. Or walk the student too and say, hey, this is how Lynn's day went, just so you know, those kind of things. So once again, this is communication.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay. Okay. Any more questions on these things here? All right, I'm just going to show you a couple others. This is like the star seat, but this one is made by HFM. And this seat packs up into a nice little carrying case that's used the same way that the star seat would be used. It has all the same components on it. It has the crotch clips, it's got the chest strap. Again, it's the same concept as the star seat, it's just a different manufacturer. And again, with this seat here, you're going to want to make sure that you're looking at the height and the weight of the child. If you're transporting in vans and Suburbans and you need a booster seat, this is the IMMI Go seat, which is a really nice, it's expensive, but it doesn't take up much room. It folds up nice. It's got a nice little case cover for it, so it's easy for storage. It's another option. It will do the same thing as a booster seat like this in your vehicle. Now, with that said, this booster seat like this should never be used in a school bus. This is meant for lap shoulder belts. Now, if your buses are equipped with lap shoulder belts, they should have the adjuster on it. These are only to be used in vans and Suburbans with the lap shoulder belt. And I know, before I became more educated on the different seats that are out there, I'm guilty that we were using these in our school buses. More injuries, but don't use this a lot. How many people use vans and Suburbans? Not very many. All right. Are you transporting kids in car seats and booster seats? Does he know, John?
Not really tough.
Anybody else? Infants? Okay. We transport a few infants, and car seats were not designed for school buses. Car seats, like this infant seat here, was designed for a car, not a school bus. Can you imagine it's rear facing? How are you going to put this in between two seats? So whenever we get an infant, we try to put them in a van or a Suburban. If you have to transport a student in a car seat, you want to make sure that you're using the correct seat for the child. Again, you're going to look at the height, the weight, and the age of a child. The recommendation is that you keep a child rear-facing in a vehicle until the age of 2. And if you look at the seats, it will say 1 year or 20 pounds, but the pediatric association is now saying their recommendation is 2 years. Europe, 4 years, rear-facing. You wonder why do you keep them rear-facing so long? It's because of their body structure. Their muscles and their bones aren't fully developed, and all of the case is a quarter of an inch on their neck cause damage their head flying forward. So keep those little ones rear facing as long as you can. Now, we had a little girl that was rear facing until she was 5 years old. And then she had documentation from her doctor. She was 5 years old, but she was about the size of a 2-year-old. Just a teeny tiny little thing. So, looking at her height and weight, she didn't even, at 5, she wasn't even 20 pounds, and she wasn't even big enough to get into that forward-facing. Forward-facing seat, it's going to have the same concept, and actually the rear-facing, when it comes to the harnesses, you're going to want those nice and snug. You're going to want them on the thigh. If they're not on the thigh, they're too high. That chest strap in the car seat, see here, on this one here. What's wrong with this one, with this little baby? Putting down. This chest strap is up too high. It's up by their neck. Again, no, in the car seat, you want that down and have that armpit level. You want the straps nice and tight. The seat, when you're putting the seat into the vehicle, you shouldn't be able to move it more than an inch back and forth at the belt path. So this particular seat, when it's rear facing, I'm going to grab it here. So the belt path, the rear facing, so the back of my seat is here. The strap is going, the left shoulder belt is going to be going through the front part of the seat here. I'm going to grab it here, and I don't want to move it more than an inch back and forth. If this were forward facing, forward facing one, the strap is going to go through the back of the seat. You always want the left shoulder belt at the closest contact to the seat, the car seat, as well as the vehicle seat. So my strap is going through here, I'm driving it at the bottom, and I shouldn't be able to move it back and forth. Too many times we see people doing it up here at the top, where they're going like this. You want to go back and forth this way, not more than an inch. Right? You can see, oh, this one's in here really good and tight, so you can try this one later on. Roger put that in there, very good job. Any questions?
You want us to move that around so people can see it, or?
You want?
That's pretty good.
Okay.
Do you want Julie to move that around?
You know, and it's always, anytime that you have, if you have a question on a particular system, whether it's a safety vest, or car seat, or star seat, you know, don't be afraid to give me a call. I'm here to help you guys answer the questions, and if I don't know the answer to the question, I'm going to try to find that answer to the question. Remember that all of your seats have expirations. The only thing that doesn't have an expiration is the Easy On vest, and that's the one with the little parachute on it. The Bessie, this one that I showed you earlier, it's a different Bessie one. This is the Bessie safety vest, which is like this blue one here. The only real difference is this one has an expiration on it, I believe it's 5 years. The other thing is that the cam wrap is color-coded. Now, you do not want to mix and match the Bessie and the Easy On. So I always tell people, if you're going to be getting safety vests, decide which one you want, which manufacturer you want to go with, and stick with that manufacturer. Because it's too easy, if you're not around, that somebody comes in and grabs the Bessie cam wrap, it was Easy On vest. Okay? So again, check them for frays, missing parts. Bessie has the expiration, Easy On doesn't. The Star seats, they have an expiration on them. There also is a rebate program every August. There's a tag on the seat. You cut that tag off, I think it's $10 or $15 that you can get back on your seat. And I know some of the vendors, the more seats that you order, the cheaper the price. This seat over here, this HSM seat, this one here at this time does not have an expiration on it. Now, can anybody tell me why do car seats have an expiration on them?
Plastic breaks down.
That's right, plastic breaks down on them. So you think about that seat that sits in, and this doesn't have plastic on it. So you think about that seat, this is our seat that sits in a cold bus all winter, hot bus all summer, or in the bus garage, that plastic starts to break down. When you go to dispose of these seats, the star seats, I keep those as training. I use those for training, so it's a good way, instead of, you've invested a lot of money in them. And even if you're looking at, a car seat, you've invested some money in them. I keep them from training, so when we're talking with drivers about using the belt cutter, practice on those. Use the belt cutters on those. Use them for drivers just to practice putting the kids in and out of it, right?
On the easy on seat, many years ago, I had an experience with a student who absolutely refused to allow us to put him in the seat. And I don't know, a light bulb went on in my head and said, look at it, you've got a parachute emblem on here. You're now an official parachute rider. And it made a world of difference in that little kid's attitude. And he immediately agreed to it. He looked forward to it. It was something simple.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because one of the things that I do is, I'm fortunate enough to have some training seats, and I use those seats. I have a small one, and we'll take that to the school where the child's at, and they actually practice. So before we even put them in the vest, if that vest is brand new to them, we'll practice. They'll wear that vest in the classroom, and then they'll practice getting in the seat, getting flipped in, so that when they get on that bus, it's not something totally new. The other thing is that sometimes it's a hard sell for parents. And what I tell parents is, I don't use the parachute, but I use race car driving. This device is almost like identical to what race car drivers use. So we'll tell them, you now have a NASCAR vest. And the kids are really excited about that. So kind of got to think outside of the box.
There's lots of little Hot Wheels that the race cars can be incentive for.
Yep. So, but, going taking that into the classroom for the other kids to see. I had one this year where it was a preschooler, and I went in and I fed him with it, and then he wore it all morning long in the classroom. And he thought he was pretty cool. The other kids thought it was pretty cool. But when we went to put him on the bus, it was a really easy transition for us. On the safety vest, I teach the parents how to put them on and give them the instructions. And then I also do the instructions in the school, because of course, when the kid comes out in the morning, they need the vest on. When they come out of the school at the end of the day, they need that vest on. So everybody has the instructions on how to use the vest. When it comes to your drivers, you need to make sure that you're training your drivers how to use this equipment. And I always say that you can never blame a driver for doing something wrong if we haven't showed them what to do. We haven't given them the tools that they need. So just because you may know how to do this, your driver may not. I chuckle sometimes when I hear the comment, well, they have kids, they know how to operate that equipment. When we have car seat clinics, it's not uncommon to have almost 100% fail. So parents are coming in with their kids, and they're installing the seats in their vehicles incorrectly. The harnesses are on their kiddos incorrectly. Take a look at a manual one from a car seat. I don't sit down and read them. I'm sorry, I get the high points that I need, but there's a lot of information in there. And just like we tell our parents, we're happy that you came here to the clinic to make sure that you're using this seat correctly. That's why we have the clinic. We want to give you the tools and teach you what you need to know. And we need to do that same thing with our drivers. So, any questions? No? All right, that's all I have. Again, you got any questions, on any kind of equipment, give me a call, shoot me off an email. I'd be more than happy to help you. Sometimes, pictures are helpful. We had, did we leave already? Bill? Yeah, okay. Bill shot me off some pictures yesterday on a piece of equipment that he was working on, so sometimes that's easier for me too to see those pictures, so. All right? No buckle guards? No buckle guards! That's an aftermarket product. We should not use buckle guards, they haven't been crash tested.
I think it should not.
What's that?
I think it should not.
All right, thanks.
All right. Well, get moving on here. We've got 2 minutes left. Got a question here about EpiPen yearly training. The question is there a date it must be completed by or just each school year? I know in my district, I have most of the students that are using EpiPen or having EpiPen with them. I train those drivers before school starts, and then actually this coming month in December, we will train all staff again. Now, if the other school districts do it differently. No? Yeah, the school nurse providing training.
Yeah, our nurse does our training, and we actually, when we brought our drivers in August, they all got the training on the EpiPens, and then we need to do a one-on-one with you're talking, was that a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I just happen to have these with me. So, in our district, we have these 2 different sheets, lime green and the orange one, that our school nurses actually came up with. So we have, one is for, this is our diabetics. So if we have a student that is a diabetic, the parents actually fill, and I'll pass this around, the parents help fill out this information, and it goes to the school nurses. A picture is attached on the form for the driver, and I get a copy of this in my office, and I attach it into our student file in Versatran. The bus company gets a copy, and the bus driver gets a copy. Then for our kiddos who have EpiPens or food allergies, same thing. Parent fills out the form, a picture's attached, everybody gets a copy, including the driver, and it also gives the drivers some symptoms to look for. And does every child who has an allergy or is a diabetic, do their parents fill these out? No, and we don't force them to, but we encourage the parents to. And our drivers are always very helpful.
Gail, you can scan them for me before my
I'll give you those 2.
Cindy, do you want to talk about the culture contest?
Culture contest, this year's hashtag Stop on Red, and I haven't been officially told, but our Division II winner from the state of Minnesota took first place at the national region, so that was really exciting. Actually, I'm privileged, so it's really exciting. So it was good. So once again, we will have some of the new winners going out. For the culture contest, the rules, and they'll come out in the newsletter officially, and they'll also send it out with the safety. So if you haven't started talking about the culture contest, now's a good time to, basically, we allow the districts using core second training in the spring. So just start, if you haven't never done anything, start with one classroom, and so, just, if you have any ideas, give me a call. I'll direct you, we have Rockford does a very nice job up there, and a lot of districts have done a nice job, Hamilton does a nice job. But if you're just starting, start with one driver wants to take it on, let's do a poster contest, have that driver do it, and just give it some recognition, it will grow. The student that won at Nationals actually was my first year, and he every night went back to the teachers to they make to decide this, they decide, she called me every day. Oh my God, not so painful. And then when he won, his day, he was so excited, you know. And then he went on to fifth grade, well, our K4 only does poster contest. He took it to fifth grade, and now he won. So, and now our middle school is now going to tag on to that because of his success, and they've seen what he got and, you know, what he could do. They announced it at the lunchroom, and it spread. So just start it, and it'll spread, because they like encouragement, and they like rewards, and we have the twins game, it's exciting, and just get started, start small and grow. I think that's all I have. Just on the MAPT site, if you're an MAPT member, you'll soon receive an invoice or an email attached. Our memberships go till the end of the year, 12/31, and they're yearly, so if you look in the mail for them, because we really increased our membership, and I appreciate all that you do for that, and if you have any questions, certainly call me about that also. Thank you.
Ray?
As I was preparing for this meeting this morning, I commented to my wife that last month I asked about passports and flying to Mexico, and the comment came out, well, is that a one-way? Unfortunately, I'm always going to come back to Minnesota. Thank you. I was on the computer, and gosh, I installed a new printer. Is that ever fun? I tried to go to a laser jet. That bombed out on me, so I went back to inkjet. But video communication's been around for a long time. More than 30 years ago, Jim DeVoe, may he rest in peace, he was the executive director for MSBOA. He'd always ask me what you got for training, you know, and then of course, the Minnesota Driver Development Series evolved, and that's part of our history. But, so I took the time to make a list of all these videos that are available by video communication. And as I made the list, there's 45 on the list, and I went through it and I thought, I missed one. They've got one out there on tail swing, how to teach drivers the dangers of tail swing on your turns. So you can add that to the list. But, you know, there's a lot of new things here that we probably haven't incorporated into our training, being able to communicate with parents, night driving, an update. There's a big one there, 45 minutes on CBO. Bus idling, bus ride security. With what's happening in our world today, I'm concerned. You know, I want to bring back to Train the Trainer that piece that I saw half a dozen years ago that Don Tudor did down in the Carolinas, where a bus was blown up, and the driver didn't realize that the bus had been driven 75 miles after she secured it the day before. And then she runs out of gas. And then when they went back to get another bus, she comes back, and as the mechanic's driving down the road with her with the second bus, her bus blows up. I mean, it was staged, but that's the reality of what we're living with. Securing our bus yards. Material we need to look at. Mirrors on buses. Three videos are braking alone, brake testing. Bullying, a couple of topics there. Loading zone, split second. Do's and don'ts of phone cell use. And always concerned about railroad crossings, vacuum procedures. The male doctors tell me that I'm crooked. My back is crooked. And I was prompted to look at that thing about the ergonomics. Drivers bending over pre-trips, you know. What kind of techniques can we help them with there? Air compressor brake systems, tire pressures. It goes on. Prevention techniques, violence on bus, intervention strategies. Now, at the outset of the meeting, I commented to Kayla, and she said, you know, these folks are great. You can go online, you can click on, you can review it, they'll send you previews, and they're not that expensive. And they, I guess they have some curriculum material, handbooks to back it up. But I put this out there because we're always asked, or people will say, well, you know, it's the same old stuff, what's new? And you really have to reach out. Now, there is a cost. My wife made that comment to me when I was telling her about this. There's no money, but you've got service groups in your communities. The Knights of Columbus, the Rotary, the Lions Club, they're doing pancake breakfast and they're raising money for this, that, and the other thing. So if you need help, reach out, ask them, hey, we've got these training aids that we need for our school bus drivers. It's a plus for the whole community. The kids will appreciate it, an incentive for them to put on their signs to encourage people to come out to the meetings, or to the benefits, fundraising. So that's, thank you.
I have one more thing. I just want, and Ray had mentioned this, he did mention the Black Lives Matter, the protest of the '94 shutdown. I mean, that was pretty scary. If that would have happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, how our buses handled that. I mean, just a thought out there. I mean, it's just full security, like you said. I think that's something that unfortunately we're going to have to start looking at. So, a question, because I really like this hot topic thing. It brings out, so I want to mention everything that we're hearing on the topic, we want to mention it and talk about it. The other piece is our website. It's a building process. All the forms that we've been given, I will be scanning and putting in there. So if you took notes, I hate taking notes, but if you want to question what you said, I'm going to have all the documents on that website. So that's your resource for this meeting. And I just hope they'll go into a really nice library resource on the devotion. Next month, we are in Randolph. Let's go.
State Forest meeting?
Yeah, so that would be next month. And then we can go back to the meeting.
Yes.
So thank you for all for coming, and
So that's December 16th.
We have Ben from Larry coming to talk about living with a disability. He's going to kind of give us a preview of what he's going to be talking about at the Transporting Students with Special Needs Conference in March.
Can I answer Jason's question earlier regarding transportation coding? Sure. Okay, ready? Jason?
Yes.
So, yes is checked on the IEP. Parent decides not to transport, yes remains checked on the IEP. You're going to code the student to 01, which is your general. The student rides the regular bus, yes is checked, but the student has services that need to be addressed on the bus. So, for example, if they have nursing services, so if there's a nurse or somebody that rides with the student on the regular ed bus, would be coded A03. Okay, let's go.
All right. Any other questions? All right, make a motion to adjourn. No, fine, me. Second. Give us seconds in order for that. And we'll make nice things come.
So thank you for attending. Make sure you take some rolls and stuff. Those were freshly made this morning, from what I understand.